Well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on the Portugal Golden Visa Program. We have a very diverse audience today. So good evening for those joining from Turkey, South Africa, and for good afternoon for our USA audience. And those joining from London, hi, and congratulations to us for surviving the heat wave. I'm Uma from BLS Global. I'm your host for today. This webinar is organized by us, BLS Global, and we are joined by our experts today, Nathan and Sara. I will introduce them properly just in a few seconds, but thank you guys for joining. BLS Global, we are a trusted name in citizenship and investment industry for the past 15 years with a strong focus on delivering high quality events and insights. And speaking of the events, here in London, we're gearing up for an exciting in-person event we're hosting next week at the Canary Wharf Hilton on January 12th. The event will be an excellent opportunity to meet the key industry experts such as Sara and Nathan. They will be traveling and coming to London, and you can dive deeper into the Portugal Golden Visa program. We are hosting this webinar in the news of recent announcement from Portuguese government regarding immigration and residency laws. The changes have created a lot of discussions and understandably a lot of questions, which we're here to answer. We're very fortunate to have with us two experts, and they'll help us understand exactly what the updates mean and what the future applicants can expect. And I'm going to run you through our flow for the webinar today. First, we'll hear from Nathan, representing STAG Fund, and he will walk us through the investment options and the fund structure. Then we'll be joined by Sara from Prime Legal, and she will provide detailed legal breakdown of the new immigration policies and explain their implications. And after both presentation, we'll move to a Q&A session. I'll be curating it, and throughout the presentation, feel free to submit your questions to our Q&A box, as well as the chat as well. And we'll try to address them all. And at the end of the webinar, we'll have a short survey. It will be very helpful if you all can answer some of the questions. And I think that's it on the flow. The session will be recorded and everyone will be sent it out at the end, along with the contacts of Nathan and Sara. So if you miss something, you will be able to ask them again or we'll watch the webinar again. Okay, and now I want to introduce Nathan Hellmann, Director of Business Development of STAG Fund Management. I recently had an opportunity, sorry, to travel with Nathan to Turkey, where I saw firsthand how he engaged directly with clients and impressively witnessed the clarity, confidence, and insight he brings to each conversation. It reflected his deep understanding of investor needs and internal fund strategies they have. Nathan plays a key role in driving growth and global expansion at STAG Fund Management, and he's delivering tailored investment solutions for the investors. He's originally from South Africa. You will hear that for yourself. And Nathan began his career in financial planning and corporate finance roles, and it's giving him a strong foundation in private client advisory. So, Nathan, pleasure to have you with us, and you can start.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the rather elaborate introduction, Uma. It certainly is a lot of pressure now on my shoulders, so I will try my best to deliver. And thank you again for the opportunity to present to this wonderful audience that we have before us. And it's also lovely to be joined by my counterparts in Portugal from a legal position, which is Sara Sousa Rebolo. So, basically, I would like to say, firstly, good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever you are joining us from. I'm delighted, of course, to have you all with us to explore one of the most exciting developments, I'll say, in sustainable investment and energy transition in Portugal and beyond, whilst also having, I guess, the ancillary benefits of being Golden Visa eligible. Today, really, we'll be focusing on the INZ, a unique proprietary fund managed exclusively by STAG Fund Management. And really, this fund is not only the forefront of driving decarbonisation across the Iberian Peninsula, but also stands out as a sole proprietary fund of STAG, which we are indeed very proud of to have initiated. I'm just going to quickly share my screen so you can see this presentation, which I would love to show you all. I think we are good to go, yes. And basically, in today's events, I will be going through, of course, all the intricacies of the fund. STAG Fund Management, really, we believe that investment is more about not just the financial returns, but also really shaping the future. And our focus is really on companies and projects with high growth potential that can make a real difference in society and the way we live. STAG is a company which has a licensed and regulated fund manager, which we're proud to say we have over 19 private equity and venture capital funds under our current management. And from this year, we also obtained our Big Dimension Independent Fund Management license, which allows us to practice among several different areas in business, being private equity funds, which several of them are Golden Visa eligible, real estate funds, which are very much also form part of the previous Golden Visa pre-2023, and also alternative investment funds, which include financial instruments here in Portugal and abroad. Looking particularly at us from a portfolio perspective and the numbers that we manage, we have over 400 million euros that we have raised directly from professional investors. Potentially, this will be increased by yourselves, or at least that is the objective here today. And we've deployed over 100 different investments over the course of our managements. With a team and a total capital, head capital of team members, we have around 20 individuals, professionals, all within the space of fund management, of course, also consisting of investment analysts. And we've also worked across 10 different countries where we actively have portfolios which we manage, including these jurisdictions on the map. So we're proud to say that as much as we are headquartered in Portugal, we also have a global footprint in amongst the world. So this is something we're also very proud of indeed. Just before I go into the INZ, I quickly wanted to give everyone an idea in terms of our multitude of different asset classes that we oversee and manage. We have hospitality, real estate, venture capital, agribusiness, and renewables, which is, of course, what I'll be speaking to you about for the INZ. And I'm proud to say as well that we've assisted over 1,000 investors and comprising over 54 different nationalities, giving our already showcasing a strength of our team to be able to deal with clients from all different walks of life, really. And from a reference point of view, the funds at the bottom of the table is, of course, funds that we've managed over time, some of which are in their second generation, and partnered with some of the biggest fund advisors in the game, as well as auditors and custodian banks, which really facilitate the whole private equity management space. Last slide, quickly before I jump in, it's always good to know exactly what our portfolio comprises of in terms of clients from around the world. So it's dominated by USA and Turkey, very much so. However, we also have strong contingency from China, from Chinese market, South African market as well, and of course the British and India as well. So broad-based group of portfolio of clients. And lastly, but not least, I did say that previously, but now I really do mean it, from a credentials point of view within the renewable energy space, our team presents and provides extensive amounts of experience working across different portfolios. Now, finally, I can get into why we're all here, really, or at least why I want us all to be here, which is regarding the INZ. So the INZ very much is a renewable energy fund which specializes and is focused very much in solar energy. So this is the main principle we invest with. It's a closed-end fund with a 50 million cap, and it has an 8% compounded annual return. Looking at the key features of the fund, sorry, my computer wants to jump ahead here. Looking really at the key features of the fund essentially is managed, well, as I mentioned, within solar panels, but it also employs capital preservation-based principles, and there is also yearly distributions. Of course, I will be addressing these in further detail across my slides that are incoming. And these yearly distributions, of course, are applied over several years of the investment. So this is a core principle of the investment that investors will have access at least to a portion of their capital via an income distribution, which is done throughout the course of the investment. There also is a project buyback. The project buyback is not, of course, to be mistaken between investor and the actual fund, but indeed between the fund and the companies that we invest with. It is judged as a low risk-based fund because of all the principles and the methodologies of the investment that are implemented. And it is, as mentioned before, a golden visa eligible based investment. It is an 8-year term, essentially. However, the term of the investment started in 2024. So the maturity now of this investment is in approximately 6.5 years, where an investor that invests with the INZ will be pretty much locked in for the remaining period of 6.5 years, ending in 2032. The investment is also deployed across Portugal, majority as per the golden visa components or eligibility components. And also we are utilizing Spain. As everyone knows, Spain is also very much a solar savvy type jurisdiction. So we're taking the best of the advantages of these two jurisdictions. For American investors, in case anyone's wondering, it is PFIC compliant, which means that it satisfies the conditions of a passive or an income investment fund. And we have appointed KPMG, who facilitates all these transactions and presents the relevant certifications required for the IRS in the USA. Now, looking at the INZ in total, in terms of the strategy, I'm very excited to present and mention to you that the INZ is a sole proprietary fund of STAG Fund Management, and a distinction which we're extremely proud of. This means every aspect of the fund, from the strategy to the execution, really is designed and managed in-house by an experienced team, ensuring alignment really with our vision for sustainability, innovation, and investor protection. So basically, if we have a look now, just in terms of how it works, the INZ fund, basically, as mentioned, is managed by STAG Fund Management, and it pools capital from investors who really want to drive real change and see solid returns. We use funds typically from professional investments capital to basically deploy into companies across Portugal, and these are generally clean tech based companies which focus on solar system, autonomous solar systems across the Iberian Peninsula, focusing on both homes and commercial properties. But instead of just selling these systems outright, we offer them on a simple subscription basis. So really think of it as a solar as a service. Our customers pay a predictable monthly fee, save on their energy bills from day one, and help decarbonize their communities. Why really does this matter? Because energy is the single best source of emissions in most cities. By removing barriers and making solar accessible, we're not just helping the environment, really. We're creating a scalable business model with creating recurring revenue and strong growth potential, which is one of the salient points, really, of the INZ. Because of the generation of how income is paid from customers to the companies we invest with, which is then paid to the fund then demonstrates elements of a fixed income type based investment, which is key for a typical golden visa investor who is looking for a more conservative type of based investment. The result really is cleaner and lower emissions for everyone, affordable, predictable energy for our customers and for our investors, meaning impact and attractive, stable returns. As an extra layer of protection on top of our diversified approach to de-risking investments, we have a rigorous process before deploying any capital into the companies we invest with. So what does this mean? Well, before we commit a single euro, we require that any clean tech company we partner with has already secured a portfolio of clients who needs the solar panel solutions. So at the bottom of the page, I'm obviously referring to these customers. This ensures we're not just investing in potential, but backing real immediate demand. So ultimately, really, it's a win-win for these companies that receive the support they need to scale from the fund, and our capital is put to work where it will have the greatest impact in the communities of Portugal and in Spain. But of course, we don't stop there. With every company we invest with, we take an equity position to secure our directorship. This gives us not only a stake in their success, but also a seat at the table, ensuring really direct oversight and visibility into the ongoing activities that are conducted on a day-to-day basis. So from a risk perspective, from an income generation perspective, we aim to achieve all of these on the highest level. Now, I've spoken to you about, of course, the methodology of the investment and how it's applied, and now I'm going to show it to you on a practical basis. So we've now deployed our first tranche of capital into a company called Bling Energy, which takes the position of clean tech company A. And Bling Energy is responsible really for managing these solar autonomous solutions that have been funded by the INZ fund. Essentially, they will do the day-to-day management of the systems and the maintenance thereof. During the period of the PPA contract, which is what the client takes up with Bling Energy, a client also has that satisfaction where they can turn to Bling Energy with any type of information that they require or maintenance work, which Bling Energy will be providing. Now, as you can see, we have Bling Solutions, which essentially is dedicated to the INZ as an SPV, or also known as an asset management vehicle, which is typically the process which we utilize in a private equity-based investment. Why is this? Well, essentially, we want to really consolidate the investment under one roof and give us direct type of management and oversee how exactly the capital is being deployed and essentially recouped, which is why we have Bling Solutions. So Bling Solutions really is dedicated to the INZ fund managed under Bling Energy. Of course, I'm always happy to answer further questions on this, as I understand that sometimes this can be a bit difficult to navigate across these different type of structures within a private equity fund. This strategy really will be replicated across all our different companies which we invest with. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we have a diversified approach, investing in a multitude of different companies, but all with the same philosophy. At the moment now, we are getting ready to deploy our next tranche of capital into Cleantech Company B, and we will soon reveal who this exact party is. Looking now in terms of why we really decided on the solar energy elements of renewables in Portugal, we did a study that really conducted and showed the power of solar and the demand for decentralized energy really in Portugal. So if you look at the third candlestick, you will have a look and see that from 2022 to 2030, there is a significant demand for decentralized type of solutions to be installed, which is what we are ultimately providing. Now, Portugal has very much been at the forefront of creating renewable energy initiatives and driving this net zero type concept really that has been relayed from the EU. So we are very confident on achieving these type of objectives as a country. And of course, this fund has direct participation in these wonderful green-based initiatives. Now, looking at it from a monetary perspective, which I know I try and keep the highlights really of the fund to the end. So I hope everyone is still there and engaged. But pretty much this is based on a 500K quantum investment, and year 3 represents 2027. So I mentioned to you that there are income distributions in the fund, and there are, of course, returns that are related to this fund. So in year 2027, we would look at declaring an income distribution of 4% of whatever is invested. So in this case, like I mentioned, I'm using 500,000 euros, and the 4% is 20,000, which is basically paid on a yearly basis until the end of the term of the investment in 2032. The end of 2032, when we are going through the disinvestment and effective liquidation of the fund, investors can then expect to receive, of course, their total capital that they initially contributed, along with the relative returns that have accumulated along the term of the investment, including, of course, income distributions. So if you have to total it all up, it'll be a total sum of around 820K that a client can expect from a 500,000 euro investment. I did mention quickly that there is a buyback guarantee. This is a bit of a very, very brief, but what this basically signifies is essentially that in the event of the exit of the fund from the investor, basically to pay back the investors, companies then have to basically pay for our equity positions that have been taken up. So this guarantee basically allows us to have a smooth exit strategy. And we also have the ability to exercise a call option if we want to essentially sell our stake of the investment to a third party, which may have a more preferable offer, which ultimately will benefit investors at the end of the day. So there are these particular type of ancillary mechanisms we use to ensure that from start to finish of the investment, it is a seamless and smooth process for investors. And the fund manager, of course, oversees all of these responsibilities. Quickly before I finish, I wanted to just go over the typical stakeholders of the fund. So we have the CMVM, as this is a fully regulated and licensed fund, overseen by CMVM themselves, of course. We've also appointed a legal and tax professional. We have a third-party auditor of Baker Tilly, who's responsible really for conducting all the auditing to avoid any conflict of interest. Bison Bank is our custodian bank. And of course, we have STAG as the official fund manager. Now, last but not least, I have the fund fact sheet here, which really breaks down all the different mechanics or mechanisms of the fund essentially and what you should expect, of course, to pay, earn, etc. Now, if you're not aware, the Golden Visa Investment Forum basically allows for an investor to diversify their investments across, as long as the quantum satisfies 500,000 euros. So in the event of INZ, if you'd like to take a diversified approach, which we always, of course, encourage, it's always a healthy way of investing, really, you can invest as little as 150,000 euros for a Class B participation unit. And if you would like to secure a slightly higher, I would say, class of a share of a participation unit, you would be looking at around 350,000 euros. The main differentiating factors between these participation units is that a Class B, you pay a 20% performance fee over and above a hurdle rate of 6%, and a Class C, you pay 15% over and above a hurdle rate of 6%. So there really is a 5% difference between the two. And ultimately, the main differentiator is at the end of the term of the investment, Class C participation unit holders will receive their monies first prior to Class B. So this is where a lot of investors see extensive value and where we see, of course, a frequent option for investors to choose this particular class. Now, from a fee point of view, we have a management fee of 1.6% per annum. We have 0.425%, which is basically an upfront annual. It's an annualized fee, so it's just a once-off fee that is diluted across the whole term of the investment. And as I mentioned, we have it as an 8% compounded annual return. And this is, of course, net of fees. So all the fees that I've mentioned now, this basically is already inclusive of that. So this would all be managed during the lifetime of the fund and deducted at the fund level. The only additional fee really that an investor would really need to look at is a subscription fee, which is 1% payable prior to the capital being paid over. So it's 1% basically, just to reiterate that principle. And that pretty much is the end of my presentation. Of course, I'll be looking forward to hearing any more questions from you. In the meantime, now I would like to just, of course, hand back over to Uma, and I look forward to hearing what Sara has to tell us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathan, for your detailed and very clear presentation. I'm now pleased to introduce our next speaker, Sara Sousa Rebolo. She's a partner and co-founder of Prime Legal, and with over a decade of experience in immigration, real estate, and foreign investment law, Sara has advised clients from around the world on navigating their Portugal's legal and immigration framework. And she was recently named also top 25 lawyers in the industry. Sara is the best person to have with us today to break down the latest immigration law changes, and I'm myself looking forward to hear her explain everything that's happening. And Sara, please enlighten us.
Of course. So thank you so much for organizing this webinar. It's a critical week because we are currently under a legislative process to change not golden visa, but the citizenship law, and citizenship law have impact in our golden visa applicants. I will go through a brief presentation on the golden visa, the standards, rights, steps, requirements, and by the end, explaining what is the current framework, what is the expected framework, and what is being discussed now. So let me just share my screen. Can you see it right?
We can see it.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So, as we are already aware at this moment, the Portuguese Golden Visa program is a residency by investment program. So it demands a an investment made in the Portuguese territory under the requirements of the law. which at this moment has 5 options of investments, being the most trendy one between investors, the investment in venture capital funds or equity funds, so collective investment bodies, let's say. The Portuguese Golden Visa is being super attractive among the others in Europe, so we can say that it's very competitive because it allows the process to start from abroad. There is no need for the clients to come to Portugal to start it. It will give the flexibility during the initial 5 years, where only 7 days a year or 14 days every 2 years it's required. On the Schengen area, it works like a Schengen visa. So by holding the residency permits, then the investor can circulate in Schengen area for the 90 days in every period on 118. It has the benefit of family reunion and has a large scope of family reunion. So under one investment, the investor can add family in terms of spouse, parents-in-law, and also children, which can be minors or adults if they are under the enrollment in school, economic dependent, and maintain their single status. With the card, it's also possible to benefit from the healthcare, educational system. So everything will depend on the connection of the client with the country, but those rights are accessible. And it's been one of the most important aspects for Golden Visa applicants is the flexibility and the rights they have in the preparation of their medium long-term plan. And finally, because this is a residency by investment program, after residency, it gives the path for citizenship. At this moment, after 5 years, and that's why the presentation has the 5 years highlighted in red. We will discuss that later on in the presentation. As I mentioned, currently we have 5 options of investments. The trendiest one is the investment in funds, Portuguese funds. It's an investment of $500,000, although we still have other options, like the creation of jobs, the company incorporation or company maintenance in Portugal, so a direct investment in a company. The investment for scientific and technological research activities, and the donation at this moment. All the projects are donation for activities of artistic output or recovery of Portuguese patrimony. No real estate options exist at this moment. They were all revoked back in 2023, October, but those clients were grandfathered and they continue to renew. The ones that were pending continue to be approved, and they keep their rights and they keep the same conditions of the program that were in force at the moment they apply. In what regards to the investment in funds, different from other countries that may have also this kind of residency by investment programs, we don't have an official list of the eligible funds that can receive Golden Visa applicants. So usually it's the legal advisor that defines the eligibility or assess the eligibility of the funds for purpose of the investments. The most important aspects to assess is that it needs to be a Portuguese fund, meaning needs to be incorporated in Portugal, needs to be registered before the Portuguese regulator that is called CMVM. The purpose of the fund must be business capitalization, because that's the purpose of the program at this moment, is to focus on the capitalization of Portuguese companies. The maturity at the moment of the investment of the clients must be of at least 5 years, the duration. The law allows that these funds, they have a diversified investment policy, meaning that the purpose is capitalization of Portuguese companies, but the capital raised from all the capital raised by the funds, there is a minimum of 60% of that capital that needs to be invested in Portuguese companies, allowing then 40% to be invested in companies out of Portugal. So to diversify and to balance the risk of the funds. The most recent requirement associated with the investments is that they should have some kind of impact in scientific, cultural activities, promotion of foreign direct investments, or job creation. So this is a point to make sure that it's not just a passive investment where the money is put there and stays for the 5 years. It needs to be money that is applied in active business that brings some high standards to the economy. In terms of steps and timings, as everybody knows, we are currently dealing with a delay in the processing of the Portuguese Golden Visa. That delay, it's explained by circumstances that we can call it the perfect storm. Everything started with volumes of applications above the capacity of the Immigration Office. They followed by COVID, where the Immigration Office was almost 2 years without available appointments. After that, a huge allocation of resources to the refugees from the Ukrainian war. After that, several changes in the law that rushed investors to apply in very big waves of applications. Changes of the Immigration Office itself, passed from the previous CEF to the currently IMA. It's a different agency, which also creates some restructuring issues. Elections from the government. So all of this had some impact. The result was a delay in the applications processes pending for more than 3 years, which the Immigration Office and the current government are now solving. These pending applications were to be solved during the first semester of 2024. Unfortunately, they were postponed now for the second semester, and it seems that we have the guarantee from the government and also from the Immigration Office that now the resources and the priority is the regularization of the queue that exists on Golden Visa. Having that in mind, the timings and the steps we have here are the ones that usually are followed. Of course, they may have some changes depending on the players that are in the concrete application and also depending on the season. Of course, summer season, we all know that less people is working, even from the public services that are involved in the process. So I usually divide the steps and timings in hiring the legal providers, which usually are associated to the tax representative, and the selection of a bank in Portugal where you should open a Portuguese bank account to make your investments. It's not mandatory, but most of the funds will require that. After this initial step, we have the standard due diligence to the fund to make sure that your selection leads you to an eligible fund for purpose of Golden Visa. And within this selection, then there is a connected step in order to have the documents, the forms, everything that is needed for purpose of compliance, for purpose of subscription of the funds, and also to prepare your immigration application. With the investment itself. So in this case, on the fund option, where the fulfillment of the $500,000 is done, and of course it's possible to diversify between funds if you wish, it's the time to gather the proof of investment, which is issued by the fund, by the management company of the fund, and by the bank that was involved in the transactions, together with your personal documents for purpose of application. And with this, we are in position to file the Golden Visa application and have the clocks starting. The filing usually it's online through an official platform of the Immigration Office. There is then a queue that leads you to an admission followed by a notification of appointment. After that, we have a step of biometric collection that is in the moment where the applicant and family members included in the application should come to Portugal to collect biometric data, so fingerprints, picture, so that a card can be produced. And finally, there is an approval and a card is issued. That initial card is valid for 2 years and it's renewed every 2 years. In terms of documents, it's quite standard documentation. So it's the passport, of course, the documents that you will need to open a bank account in any European country, clean criminal record from you, any family member with 16 years old or more, proof of your local tax identification and a Portuguese tax number as non-tax resident if you are not relocating to Portugal, which is very similar also for the family members, where the additional document we will need is the document that shows the family link. So a birth certificate or a marriage certificate, for instance. In terms of the fees on the program, there is always 2 fees at each stage. One that regards to an analysis fee, so that the process can be submitted before the Immigration Office, And the second one that regards to the card fee, so that you can have access to your residency card itself, which is exactly the same per family member, so it's per person. And now we begin with the changes. At this moment, I will present in these slides the current framework. And the current framework gives you a 5 years path that starts with the Golden Visa. And at this moment, after the initial application, you have access to different paths after 5 years. You can continue to renew the Golden Visa if you wish, so every 2 years, maintaining your investments. You can access permanent residency card if you want after 5 years, where exists already a requirement of language, but has no residency requirements and has no investments requirements. So after 5 years, you can withdraw your investment in the exact same terms. Or at this moment, after 5 years, counting from the application date, you can apply for citizenship. This is the current framework. It's very straightforward. It's a plan 5 years, sometimes a little bit more depending on the queues for Golden Visa approval, for citizenship approval, but that's the timings that are in the law. With the changes, the situation will be this one. Instead of being possible to go straight from a Golden Visa to the citizenship, worst case scenario, we will have a path of 10 years to access citizenship. And I say worst case scenario because we are still in a very early stage of the law. The proposal presented by the government has different stages of discussion, and it's just starting this Friday, as I will explain you. So at this moment, there is no new law in force, and we do not know what will be the final wording. That's very important to highlight. But worst case scenario, what we will have is this Golden Visa for 5 years. After Golden Visa, permanent residency card, which, as I mentioned, has no residency requirements, no obligation of maintaining the investment, no tax impact if you don't live in Portugal. And after that permanent residency card, you accomplish 10 years. And with that accomplishment, you can apply for Portuguese citizenship under the same conditions. So basically, instead of having a direct path to citizenship, you have now a bridge that will be fulfilled by the permanent residency card. Also, other changes that are being proposed, and we don't know if they will be approved like they are, or with amendments, or not approved at all. So this, as I mentioned, is the early stage of the process, and we'll have the input of the parliament and other parties. Why? Because the current government is a minority government. They need more votes from the opposition to pass this bill. And even after that, there are constitutional aspects that needs to be confirmed and a validation that needs to be made by the President of the Republic. Either way, before going to the legislative process itself, the possible changes on the Golden Visa applicants, because there are other proposals being discussed with impact in other applicants, but we here are focused on the ones that may have impact in the Golden Visa, are the fact that besides the standard language requirement, which we already have at this moment, it's possible that they will add 2 additional formalities. One, cultural tests, and the signature of a declaration of commitment with the Portuguese principles and democratic rule of law. Okay. In terms of other changes that may have impact, is the moment where the 10 years start counting. As I mentioned previously, currently the 5 years, they start counting from the application date, so from the Golden Visa date. This is a very recent amendment to the Portuguese law. It was introduced in March 2024 because the standard rule since the beginning was counting the period, regardless it was 6 or 5, but counting it from the first card. So here, with this proposal of the law, they go back to that calculation method. So they want to calculate from the first card and not from the application. Other than that, there is also a potential change in the law in terms of the situation of criminal records from the applicants. Under the previous law, it was possible to have something in the criminal record, something that was not too serious to have impact. And now the purpose is to tighten the aspects related to crimes, where applications shall not be admissible if the individuals have any kind of criminal records that under the Portuguese law would be punishable with an imprisonment sentence of 1 year or more. Okay, so this is one of the topics that is also under discussion in the proposal that was presented by the government. In terms of the process itself and why I say that we are in a very early stage of the process, because under the Portuguese rules, when a proposal is presented, and especially the ones that regards to citizenship, because it's a fundamental right, so they have other impact in terms of security and the reinforcement of votes. It all starts with the submission of the application of the proposal, which was done in June 25 this year. It's followed by a general discussion. So the general terms, if it's a law to be discussed in detail or not, which in this particular case is scheduled for tomorrow, so Friday. So we are in a very hot topic at this moment. After this general discussion, the wording of the law goes to a discussion in the what we call speciality, because it's detailed, it's article by article, and it's where the parties will make their own suggestions. There are some settlements between each parties in order to achieve a reinforced agreement on the final wording. And then that final wording goes to the debate and goes to a general voting in the parliament. With a positive vote that requires, in this case, a reinforced majority, that final wording is then sent as a law that is finished to the President of the Republic. The President of the Republic has three possibilities. It can approve the law, it can request the verification by the Constitutional Court in case there are any aspects where he believes that future litigation in standard courts may raise doubts and may have raised different interpretations, or even if there are rules in the law that he believes to be against the Constitution, or he can just say that he does not agree with the law and send back to the Parliament with suggestions of amendments. So we have these three paths. Very important, our current President of the Republic is a previous constitutionalist academic teacher, so he looks into this with very detail. Also important, the Portuguese Parliament has summer vacations, which will start around 17th of July, which means that we are in a very tight calendar in case the government wants to have this law published before summer. We don't know if that will occur or not. It will depend on the next steps, but we have that topic. So it's a very, very, very fast legislative process, which is not so common, neither adequate to a citizenship law, or we will have here a summer reassessment that will have impact in the changes. And finally, when we have a law final wording that pass through all of these stages, we will have a publication. And even in that publication, we may have an entrance into force, so an immediate application, or some transitional periods, which can be for the entire law or just for some parts of the law. It's also something that we will see in the wording that will come from the discussion. After being into force, it is also possible, that's under the normal application, to request what we call the successive abstract validation of the constitutionality of the law. So it's something that the Parliament can request if they still believe that there is here some doubts regarding the compliance of the law with the Portuguese constitution. So it's a complex process. It's a process with several stages. During those stages, it's much more than normal to have amendments to the wording, because the parties need to discuss, they need to present arguments, they need to make concessions, because it's an important and very nuclear law that requests a reinforced agreement between the representatives of the Republic. So that's the situation where we are. Possible scenarios. Of course, this is just subjective. It's something that we can have in consideration, but we don't know. So it's an estimation of what may happen. Scenario A, the draft of the law is amended. And at this moment, we know that several stake players in the market, they are doing their efforts to present proposals, law firms, associations, funds, so different stakeholders, they are doing their inputs also on the legislative process with the focus of protecting all the previous applicants. So the residents, applicants with ongoing applications of residency, and also they are trying to reduce the timings to access citizenship from 10 to a lower number, maybe 7, we don't know, but it's something that it's gathers some consensus between some of the representatives. Scenario B, there is no change, the law goes as it is, and in that case, we will have we believe some discussion to be done, especially by previous investors, because of course they start the application with the expectation of the 5 years, and if this law applies to them and presents them before a situation of 10, much probably they will want to discuss this in court. For the ones that do not want to discuss this in court, or that in the meantime we have a court decision that confirms the understanding of the law, we still have, as I mentioned, the golden PR, which will be the bridge between the standard golden visa and the citizenship application. So this is where we are. It's the ideas we may have for the next weeks or months. And for sure, we will keep the industry and the clients and the partners updated on any developments and important movements in this perspective. Why Portugal? I hope at this moment you already know why Portugal is so trendy and such a target of interest between investors. So this, I will not bother you with all the rankings where Portugal is, but for sure we will then share the presentations and you can see by yourself. And you can see also when visiting Portugal, which we invite you to come as soon as you can. Thank you so much. Back to Uma.
Thank you so much, Sara. This covered, I think, all the questions people had about recent changes. So we don't have much time left, so we'll just jump straight into Q&A. Most of the questions that people ask already been covered, but we can go over some of them. So we had question regarding if the golden visa now requires 10 years before gaining citizenship or still 5 years. And does this mean you have to hold investment for 10 years? If
So no, the
quickly.
current law is still 5 years. There is a proposal of 10, but is not yet decided. There is a long process until we go there. In terms of maintenance of the investments, according to the current law, it's only the 5 years, even if the citizenship law is amended to 10 years. As I mentioned right in the beginning of the webinar, residency and golden visa are one thing, one law, citizenship is another one. So golden visa law is not being discussed at this moment. It will be after summer, but not now. And the requirements of maintenance of the investment are still the same, which are 5 years from the first residency card, and that will not change under this discussion of this amendment to the law for the 10 years or even for the 7 years.
Okay. And then we have a question, what if we file before changes come into law? Would that help people protect the timeline? of their citizenship application, or it's still not clear?
So the current wording of the law do not have any grandfather clause in terms of the ongoing residency applications, okay? Citizenship applications ongoing for sure are protected, but is one of the topics, as I mentioned, that the stakeholders are presenting their suggestions, is to have express protection of the previous applications of residency. So people that applied for residency programs, Golden Visa or any other residency program that lead to citizenship after 5 years, because they do have that expectation. So the markets, law firms, associations, they are all pressuring in terms of having that change on the law, so that can be black on white, that they will be protected. So that is ongoing discussion.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then we have a question for Nathan. Nathan, come back to us. Nathan,
Yes.
there's a question for you from Brian about what's the percentage of how the INZ fund is planned to be used across both Portugal and Spain? And also regarding customers, what are the customer classes the firm will partner with, large businesses or mix of large and mid-small businesses?
So thank you very much, firstly, for the question. Predominantly, we will be focusing 60% of at least 60% of exposure will be in Portugal, and the remaining will be in Spain because of the fact of its solar savviness in relation to solar autonomous solutions makes for a very, of course, a market that is conditioned for this type of solution. So we'll be applying that, as well as the fact that our counterparts and parties that we are utilizing have this, I would say, this extra oversight and insight, let's say, into the Spanish market. So we've covered these areas well, and we've also understood that there is a general level of demand, of course, in this particular sector, which compounds or really refines our strategy in particular. With regards to the class of customers or that will be taking up this autonomous solar solution, it's predominantly within the residential solar sector. This is where we see a market which needs to be supplied at quite a severe level. Reason being that in general, a typical type of middle-class family in Portugal and in Spain finds it a little bit challenging, let's say, to afford a fully founded solar autonomous solution system, which can average between 15 and 20,000 euros. So this is really the gap that we are trying to really target and fill. So majority, like I said, within the residential sector. However, this does not discard the commercial sector and corporate sector as well. Basically, in simplified terms, any type of building that has a roof that, of course, we can install solar panels on. Effectively, will be allowed to work or take up a PPA contract with the clean tech energy companies that we invest with.
All right, thank you for that. That answers Brian's question. Then, Felipe, we did not move to the chat questions yet. I believe you're referring to a question you asked in the chat. So, regarding the term on the fund is 8 years, if the law changes to 10 years for citizenship, can the fund rules be changed? Thank you.
Yeah, so basically how it works is that a typical type of fund, it's correct, it's a good observation, by the way. In the case, let's speak about the INZ has an 8-year term until 2032. And generally speaking, of course, a private equity closed-end structure has a defined term, which agrees, of course, with the management regulation of the fund. Now, in the event that we need to extend the fund term, this is possible. However, a vote needs to be taken across all participation unit holders in the fund, and if the majority decision is to extend the term of the fund, this is possible. There is also a secondary movement that one can do if, say, for instance, the fund is not extended. So these participation unit holders also have a choice to migrate their funds to another fund within a portfolio of that particular fund manager. So in the example of STAG, we'd be able to migrate those funds to another fund. Ideally, it would be an open-end fund so that they have liquidity features just to, of course, cover those extra remaining years, because, of course, you wouldn't want to ideally go into another closed-end fund which has another period of, say, 4, 5, or 6 years, whatever. So, for instance, we can migrate your funds into an opening type structure, and then they can have, of course, access to that, which, by the way, we are in the process of launching very excitedly. So, and of course, I'll be very encouraged to, of course, send you this information as soon as it's available.
Okay. Thank you, Nathan. Then we also have a question from Adam. Can there be a partial payment in Golden Visa in which I can start with 250 and pay remaining in 2 months?
There is no specific time to conclude your investments, provided that the same law is still in force. So you can start now and complete after summer. If the law is still in force, you apply when you have completed your investments. So indeed, you can have installments of investments, but the application itself can only start when 500,000 is fulfilled.
Then we have a question from Alex. Is there any nationality that won't be accepted in Portugal?
No, we do not have any quotas or blacklist countries, let's say. What we have is the possibility of the refusal by the immigration office in case the applicants coming from countries subject to sanctions. And as far as we can tell so far, it is always analyzed case by case.
Okay, thank you. Then we have one more question. If we apply soon, when is the residence permit issuing? And is 5 years starting from application date under provisions now? And then, yeah, I think it's 2 different questions, but yeah, if they apply soon, when will they get the residency card?
So at this moment, it's a little bit hard to make that estimation because of the queue and because 2025, it's a year of transition between previous proceedings and new proceedings. But if everything goes well, we do expect that 2025 clients, they achieve their first cards within 1 year, 1.5 years.
Okay. And one more question. What are the extra costs apart from the investment 500,000?
So what the clients should have in consideration in their calculations and personal Excel, usually it's number of family members, the fees with the investment, the fees with the immigration office, the fees with the legal advice, tax representation, if it's not included, and in some cases, the fees with the subscription of the fund.
Okay. I think we covered most of the questions. There's one more question that I can answer. Will today's presentation be shared with today's attendees? Yes. We will share the full presentation. We will share the contacts with Sara and Nathan so you guys can reach out to them. And also we will share the details of our event if you're in London so you can come meet them in person. And we will launch, I think we covered almost everything today. And we managed to finish just on time. I want to thank everyone for joining, and I want to thank Sara and Nathan for their participation. We've launched a quick surveys. If you guys have a time just to fill that in, that will be very helpful. And that's all from our side. And thank you, Sara and Nathan. Anything you want to add?
Thank you for assisting to the webinar, and we look forward to see you in London next week.
I echo Sara's sentiments, and thank you as well very much for hosting a fantastic webinar. We appreciate it so much. Also the questions as well from all the attendees, and thank you very much for your time, everyone, and your concentration that I can see it was upheld throughout the period of the webinar. Thank you very much.